The morning sun cast long shadows across the Riverside Animal Control Facility in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, as Sheriff Tom Bradley checked his weapon one final time. In 30 minutes, he would have to do something he'd been dreading for weeks: put down Titan, a 2,000-pound Angus bull whose violent outbursts had terrorized the community for months. Titan stood in the reinforced concrete pen at the far end of the facility, his massive black frame trembling with barely contained rage. His eyes, bloodshot and wild, tracked every movement outside his enclosure. The thick steel bars bore deep gouges from his horns, testament to countless attempts to break free from his prison. "I still don't like this, Tom," said Dr. Sarah Mitchell, the facility's head veterinarian, as she approached with a clipboard full of incident reports. 3 attacks in 2 months. Mrs. Henderson still can't use her right arm properly. And that kid from the Peterson farm, he's lucky to be alive. Sheriff Bradley nodded grimly, remembering the call that had sealed Titan's fate. 8-year-old Jimmy Peterson had been helping his father repair a fence when Titan charged without warning, trampling the boy and leaving him with 2 broken ribs and a punctured lung. The boy would recover, but the community's patience had run out. "The judge's order is clear," Bradley said, his voice heavy with resignation. "Titan is classified as a dangerous animal. Too many incidents, too much risk. We can't relocate him. No sanctuary will take an aggressive bull with this kind of history." Through the reinforced glass of the observation room, they could see Titan pacing back and forth, his hooves creating small craters in the concrete floor with each step. Every few minutes he would stop and ram his head against the bars, the metallic clang echoing through the facility like a death nail. "What I don't understand," Dr. Mitchell continued, "is why he became so violent." According to his previous owner, Titan was gentle as a lamb for the first 5 years of his life. Prize-winning show, bull calm around children, never showed a hint of aggression. Then something changed. She flipped through the pages of medical records, her brow furrowed with concern. 3 different veterinarians examined him. No brain tumors, no obvious injuries, no signs of disease. Blood work came back normal. It's like he just snapped. Sheriff Bradley checked his watch. 25 minutes. Outside the facility, a small crowd had gathered. Some protesters holding signs reading, "Save Titan and animals deserve justice." Others supporting the decision, including several of Titan's victims and their families. The local news crew had arrived an hour ago, turning what should have been a quiet, necessary procedure into a media circus. "Maybe some animals are just born bad," Bradley muttered, though the words felt wrong leaving his mouth. In his 15 years as sheriff, he'd seen enough to know that violence often had roots, reasons that weren't always visible on the surface. Dr. Mitchell was about to respond when a commotion erupted near the facility's entrance. A woman was arguing loudly with the security guard, gesturing frantically toward a small figure beside her. Even from a distance, they could see it was a child, a little girl who couldn't have been more than 8 or 9 years old. "That's Maria Santos," Dr. Mitchell recognized. "She works at the deaf school downtown. I wonder what she's doing here." The argument grew more heated, with Maria pointing repeatedly toward Titan's pen, while the security guard shook his head firmly. The little girl beside her stood perfectly still, her dark eyes fixed not on the adults arguing above her, but on something beyond the glass walls of the facility. She was looking directly at Titan. What was strange was that Titan had stopped pacing. For the first time in weeks, the massive bull stood completely motionless, his head turned toward the entrance where the little girl stood. His wild eyes, usually filled with rage and panic, seemed almost curious. "Tom," Dr. Mitchell whispered, her voice filled with wonder. "Look at him. I've never seen Titan calm like that. What do you think that little girl is seeing that we're not?" 20 minutes until execution. Outside, the crowd was growing larger, and inside, a condemned bull and a deaf child were sharing a moment that neither science nor logic could explain. The little girl's name was Maya Santos, and at 8 years old, she had never heard a single sound in her life. Born profoundly deaf, Maya experienced the world through vibrations, visual cues, and an intuitive understanding of body language that often amazed the adults around her. Her Aunt Mariah, who worked as a sign language interpreter at the Cedar Rapids School for the Deaf, had brought her to the facility not to protest or support, but because Maya had insisted on coming after seeing the story on the news. "Please, Maria," pleaded with the security guard, her hands moving rapidly as she signs simultaneously for Maya's benefit. "She just wants to see the bull for a moment. She's been obsessed with this story since yesterday. I can't explain it, but she says she understands what's wrong with him." The guard, a burly man named Pete, looked skeptical. "Ma'am, this is an active animal control situation. We can't just let civilians, especially children, get close to a dangerous animal that's about to be—" He paused, glancing down at Maya's innocent face. "Well, you know." But Maya wasn't paying attention to the conversation. She had pressed her small hands against the glass wall of the facility, her eyes locked on Titan with an intensity that made everyone around her uncomfortable. Unlike the adults who saw a dangerous, unpredictable animal, Maya seemed to see something else entirely. Through the glass, she could see Titan's massive form standing perfectly still, which was unusual according to everything she'd read about him online. The news articles had described a violent, raging beast, but the bull she was looking at seemed lost, hurt. His body language spoke to her in ways that words never could. Maya tugged on her aunt's sleeve and began signing rapidly, her small hands moving with the fluid grace of someone who had been communicating this way since birth. Maria's eyes widened as she translated. "She says," Maria paused, shaking her head in disbelief. "She says the bull is in pain, that he's not angry, he's scared, and she says she can help him. Before we continue with this incredible story, I need to ask you for a huge favor. If this story is touching your heart and you're amazed by what you're seeing, please hit that like button right now. It really helps us share these powerful stories with people who need to hear them. And if you're not subscribed yet, please hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Stories like Maya's deserve to be heard by everyone, and your support helps us bring you more incredible tales of connection, hope, and the amazing bonds between humans and animals. Trust me, what happens next will completely change how you think about communication and understanding. Sheriff Bradley, who had been watching from inside, approached the group at the entrance. He'd seen enough in his career to know when something unusual was happening, and the way Titan had reacted to the little girl's presence was definitely unusual. "Dr. Mitchell," he called over his shoulder, "how much time do we have?" 15 minutes, she replied, checking her watch nervously. Bradley studied Maya for a moment, noting how she stood completely unafraid despite being told about Titan's violent history. Most adults wouldn't get within 50 feet of the bull's pen, yet this 8-year-old girl seemed drawn to him like a magnet. "What exactly is she saying?" Bradley asked. Maria signed the question to Maya, who responded with a complex series of gestures that seemed to tell an entire story. Her face was animated, her eyes bright, with the kind of certainty that only children possess. "She says Titan isn't a bad bull," Maria translated slowly, clearly struggling to believe her own words. "She says something is hurting him, making him act crazy. She wants to get closer to him." Dr. Mitchell had joined them now, her medical curiosity overriding her caution. How could she possibly know that she's never seen the bull before, never examined him? Maya signed something else and Maria's face went pale. "She says she can feel his pain, that when she puts her hands on the glass, she can sense the vibrations of his distress. She says it's like he's screaming, but nobody can hear him. The facility had gone quiet, except for the distant sound of Titan's breathing. Even the protesters outside seemed to sense that something important was happening. Mia continued to press her hands against the glass, her small face a mask of concentration. Then something remarkable happened. Titan, who had been standing motionless since Mia's arrival, began to move slowly toward the glass wall, not with the aggressive charge that had characterized his behavior for months, but with careful, deliberate steps. When he reached the barrier, he lowered his massive head until it was level with Maya's. They stood there, separated by reinforced glass. A condemned bull and a deaf child communicating in a language that neither science nor experience could explain. What happened next defied everything. Everyone thought they knew about animal behavior. As Titan pressed his massive head against the glass, Mia began what could only be described as a conversation, not with words or sounds, but with something far more profound. Maya placed both her palms flat against the glass, where Titan's head rested on the other side. Her eyes closed in concentration, and those watching could see her small body beginning to tremble slightly, as if she were receiving some kind of signal through the vibrations in the glass. "What is she doing?" Sheriff Bradley whispered, afraid to break whatever spell was being cast in front of them. Dr. Mitchell, her scientific mind struggling to process what she was witnessing, stepped closer. "I don't know, but look at Titan's vital signs." She
pointed to a monitoring device that had been attached to track the bull's stress levels. The readings, which had been spiking erratically for weeks, were beginning to steady Maya's aunt. Maria watched in amazement as her niece began a series of gentle movements with her hands against the glass. They weren't traditional sign language gestures, but something more primitive, more instinctual. It was as if she were painting invisible pictures with her fingers, telling a story that only Titan could understand. The bull's response was immediate and stunning. His breathing, which had been rapid and agitated, began to slow. The wild, panicked look in his eyes gradually gave way to something that looked almost like relief. For the first time since his arrival at the facility, Titan's massive body relaxed. "This is impossible." Dr. Mitchell breathed. "His cortisol levels are dropping. His heart rate is normalizing. It's like she's sedating him somehow." But Maya wasn't done. She began making soft vibrations with her throat. Not sounds exactly, since she couldn't hear them, but the physical sensations that deaf people sometimes use to communicate with animals. The vibrations traveled through her body, through her hands, and into the glass. Titan responded by lowering himself to the ground, his massive frame settling with surprising gentleness. He kept his head pressed against the glass, his eyes now focused entirely on Maya, with what could only be described as trust. Sheriff Bradley checked his watch. 10 minutes. "Maria," he said urgently, "ask her what she's sensing. What is she picking up from him?" Maya's eyes opened and she began signing rapidly, her small hands moving with increasing urgency. Maria's face grew more incredulous with each gesture. She says, Titan is trying to tell her about pain in his head. Sharp, constant pain that makes him crazy. She says it's like something is stuck, something metal, and it's been hurting him for months. Dr. Mitchell's eyes widened. "Metal. We did x-rays, but we only focused on major organs and bones. We never specifically looked at his ears or sinuses for foreign objects." Maya continued signing and Maria translated in real time. She says the pain is worst when there are loud noises. That's why he charges. He's not being aggressive. He's trying to escape the sound that makes the pain worse. The pieces were beginning to fall into place. Titan's attacks had all occurred during noisy situations. The county fair with its loudspeakers. The Peterson farm during tractor operation. Mrs. Henderson's property during a backyard barbecue with music playing. She wants to help him. Maria continued translating. She says, if we can get the metal thing out, he'll be okay again. But she needs to get closer to show us where it is. The request hung in the air, like a challenge to everything they knew about safety protocols. allow an 8-year-old child into an enclosure with a bull that had been condemned to death for violent behavior. It was unthinkable. But as they watched, something extraordinary continued to happen. Titan remained perfectly calm, his attention fixed on Maya, with an intensity that suggested he understood exactly what she was trying to do. It was as if the bull was pleading with them to trust this small girl, who had somehow managed to communicate with him when no one else could. 5 minutes. Dr. Mitchell announced, her voice tight with tension. Maya looked up at the adults surrounding her, her dark eyes filled with the kind of determination that only comes from absolute certainty. She signed something to her aunt, who hesitated before translating. She says, "She knows you're scared, but Titan isn't dangerous anymore. The pain made him dangerous. She says she can make him feel safe, but only if you trust her." The weight of the decision fell heavily on Sheriff Bradley's shoulders. Follow protocol and carry out the execution of what appeared to be a suffering animal, or take an unprecedented risk based on the intuition of a deaf child. Sheriff Bradley made a decision that would haunt him for the rest of his life if he was wrong. Against every protocol, every safety regulation, and every instinct screaming at him to stop, he unlocked the gate to Titan's enclosure. "If this goes wrong," Dr. Mitchell started, but Bradley held up his hand. "Look at him," Bradley said quietly. "Really look at him. When's the last time you've seen Titan this calm?" It was true. The massive bull remained in his resting position, his eyes fixed on Maya with an expression that seemed almost grateful. As the gate swung open, Titan didn't move, didn't show any sign of the aggression that had defined him for months. Mia stepped forward without hesitation, her small frame dwarfed by the enormous animal. The adults held their breath as she approached, every muscle in their bodies tense to react if something went wrong. But instead of violence, something beautiful happened. Maya knelt beside Titan's massive head and placed her hands gently on his forehead just above his eyes. The bull's response was immediate. He closed his eyes and let out a deep, rumbling sigh that seemed to release months of pent-up tension. Maya began her unique form of communication again, running her hands along Titan's head and neck, feeling for something the adults couldn't see. Her face was a mask of concentration as her sensitive fingers explored the areas around his ears. Suddenly, she stopped. Her eyes widened and she began signing frantically to her aunt. She found something. Maria translated, her voice filled with excitement. Behind his left ear, deep in the canal, she says, "It feels like metal, sharp metal, and it's been pushing against something important." Dr. Mitchell grabbed her medical bag and rushed into the enclosure, her scientific curiosity overriding her fear. "Maya, can you show me exactly where?" Maya guided the veterinarian's hand to a spot just behind Titan's left ear. Dr. Mitchell probed gently with her fingers, and her face went pale when she felt what Mia had discovered. "There's definitely something foreign here," she said in amazement. "How did we miss this? It's deep, but I can feel the edge of what feels like a piece of metal fencing or wire." As Dr. Mitchell examined the area more closely, the pieces of Titan's story began to fall into place. "This would explain everything," she said, her voice filled with growing excitement. "If there's a sharp piece of metal lodged against his inner ear, every loud sound would send waves of excruciating pain through his head. He wasn't being aggressive. He was in agony." Maya continued to comfort Titan as Dr. Mitchell prepared an emergency procedure. The bull remained perfectly still, as if he understood that help was finally coming. Maya's presence seemed to act as a natural anesthetic, keeping him calm and cooperative. "I need to extract this immediately," Dr. Mitchell announced. "The inflammation around the foreign object is severe. It's amazing he survived this long with this kind of pain." Using specialized tools, Dr. Mitchell began the delicate process of removing the metal fragment. Mia never left Titan's side, her hands providing constant comfort as the veterinarian worked. Each time Titan showed signs of discomfort, Mia would adjust her touch somehow, knowing exactly how to keep him calm. 20 minutes later, Dr. Mitchell held up a jagged piece of metal fencing about 2 inches long, its sharp edges stained with blood and infection. "This is what's been torturing him," she said, showing the fragment to Sheriff Bradley. "Probably got lodged during one of his escapes months ago. Every sound, every vibration would have sent shock waves of pain through his entire head, as if responding to the removal of his torment." Titan's eyes cleared for the first time in months. The wild, panicked expression that had defined him was gone, replaced by the gentle intelligence that his original owner had described. Maya smiled and began signing to her aunt, who laughed through her tears as she translated. "She says Titan is saying thank you. She says he feels like himself again." The transformation was remarkable. Within minutes, Titan struggled to his feet and began moving around the enclosure. But his movements were different now. Curious, gentle, exploratory. He approached each of the adults with caution, but without aggression, sniffing their hands like a massive, gentle dog. When he came to Maya, he lowered his head and nuzzled her gently, a gesture of gratitude that brought tears to everyone's eyes. The little girl who couldn't hear had listened better than anyone else, and her unique way of understanding had saved a life that everyone else had given up on. Outside word was spreading quickly through the crowd. The condemned bull had been saved not by lawyers or protesters, but by an 8-year-old deaf girl who had heard his silent scream for help. What would you have done in Sheriff Bradley's position? Followed the rules or trusted a child's extraordinary